Well, I'm assuming that we're up live. So, welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Got a new computer. Hopefully, everything sounds okay and everything looks okay. And my partner Joe Rayo is here, and hopefully, he will sound okay and look okay as well.
I think so.
Thank you. Um, Everybody says it sounds good and looks good, so I guess I hit the right buttons. So this was a very interesting day, especially because it took me almost over 10 minutes to find out how to turn the darn computer on, which was, they moved it to the middle of the key. They moved put the power button on the keyboard. And then, and anyway, I found it. We're on our way. So hope everybody had a great weekend. Welcome to everybody on the chat board. And for those of you who are watching in the background, we invite you to join in the conversation. And also welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can find us here on my YouTube channel, Sunday through Thursday at 7:35, and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around, we'll add an extra show or two. Make sure you turn your notifications on, and this way you don't miss us. And of course, if you like the show, hit the like button, because Joe and I love when we get over 100 likes. So the Arctic air is pulling out, but it's somewhat stubborn. We've got one of the things that's keeping the temperatures from rising too quick is the fact that the high is going out to the south, and the wind has been predominantly west, which right now is not a warm wind because this Arctic air covered everybody east of the Rockies. So it's taking a lot of time to scour it out.
And Joe, this is not what we're looking at over the next 24 to 48 hours. We're not looking at a major storm. We're not looking at the potential for significant snow accumulations. We're not looking at any kind of extreme bouts of frigidly cold weather. And yet, this particular pattern that is shaping up for the next 24 to 36 hours has me rather concerned because it's one of those situations where whenever it doesn't look like all that much, sometimes it amounts to something rather significant. In this particular case, what we're looking at tomorrow into tomorrow night is a bout of very light precipitation, maybe no more than a tenth of an inch total in terms of liquid precipitation. But unfortunately, the temperatures are going to be exceedingly marginal to or relative to the freezing mark, right around 32 degrees. And what we may be looking at tomorrow into tomorrow night is not just plain rain, but also sleet, ice, and even wet snow, which could be just enough to slick up roadways in many localities, at least in the lower Hudson Valley, just enough to make for a problem or make for getting from point A to point B very problematic, especially for later tomorrow and on into tomorrow night. People have been asking me, when do we expect all this to begin? And I just told Renata, and I hope my daughter is watching. She's up in the New Paltz area. I think now we may not have to worry about much of anything coming until after 9 or 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. But after that, all bets are off, and everything is going to be dependent upon the local temperature, where you happen to be or where you happen to be driving. And it's not so much just the air temperature, but the ground. You know, Joe, for the first time in 8 days, the temperature at my house here in Putnam Valley got above freezing for a few short hours, up to
Right.
35 actually. But that ground is very, very cold. And so, even if the temperatures are above freezing tomorrow, when the precipitation hits that very cold ground, as my wife is pointing out on the chat board here, maybe a bit dicey in some parts of the Hudson Valley. Not necessarily just the mid and upper Hudson Valley, but the lower Hudson Valley, which is where even I happen to be. So that's what I'm concerned about for tomorrow, is the prospect of slippery road conditions and maybe some ice or sleet or whatever. And it doesn't, again, it's not going to amount to all that much, but even with very light amounts of precipitation in this type of a pattern, this could make for a very treacherous, a very slick, slippery type of situation.
So the weather service, I have the map up of the their ice accretion forecast. You know, I can remember one of the most treacherous times. This was sometime in the early '90s. One of the most treacherous times I drove in was during an overnight period where there was freezing drizzle. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't a lot of precip. But it was just enough to put a glaze of ice on roadways, including highways. This was in the time when they didn't brine roads. And I'm wondering, by the way, since there's no winter weather advisory up, I wonder whether are they brining up by you? Because I'm thinking they may not be.
No, nobody, and that's the other thing that's really weird to me is that the Weather Service, the National Weather Service, neither in Albany or in New York, has put out any kind of an advisory, and even a special weather statement, for goodness sake. Put out a special statement saying there may be some slick and slippery road conditions. There's nothing out there on the on social media or on the websites alerting people to the possibility or the prospect that we may look at some slick and slippery conditions tomorrow into tomorrow night. And you're right. I think I remember that time that you made reference to the freezing drizzle when Renata and I were working at a weather office in Flushing, Queens, and we used to leave for work at 4 o'clock in the morning. I remember stepping outside on one particular morning, looking at my driveway and saying, "Oh, isn't that pretty? That's pretty. It's glistening. It's so nice. It's no problem." And I literally slid down the driveway onto the street, and we must have done like 3 or 4 180s or tailspins or whatever. It was a very treacherous, and again, it really didn't amount to all that much in terms
Right.
of precipitation, but it was just cold enough, just enough to make for a treacherous situation for travelers, and that may very well be the case. Maybe not necessarily first thing in the morning out the box tomorrow for the commute to work or to school, but by midday and especially the afternoon and especially tomorrow evening, it could be, again, rather slick, slippery, and treacherous.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the numbers that they've got some patchy areas hatched out in the Hudson Valley north of Route 84. Um, a hundredth to 300ths of ice accretion, about 500ths up in the Catskills, a hundredth or two in northern New Jersey. You know, some places yes, some places no. They really didn't give it a broad brush here. Watch the wind tomorrow too, because if there's not much wind, that'll with the precip coming down, if winds are under 5 miles an hour, um, that's going to help to hold the cold temperatures even longer. There's if you get a south wind, that could help. Certainly help the cause to get the temperatures higher. But you're right. It's going to be a struggle in inland spots to scour on. This is Arctic air. Arctic air has its own quality to it, and oftentimes it takes a lot even in a pattern where you're supposed to get warm, it can take a lot to get it out of the way, a lot of time to boost the temperatures up. And we've seen that the rise in temperatures have been pretty much in stair steps. I mean, very, very small stair steps that we're taking. And again, everybody east of the Rockies, east of the Mississippi, just 24 hours ago, we were sitting, actually about 36 hours ago, we were sitting with temperatures below zero in the Tennessee and Ohio Valley. And in fact, we do see ice accretion being forecast across Pennsylvania, more significant in Ohio, even more so in Indiana and in Illinois, around Chicago, a quarter of an inch, much of northern Illinois, northeastern Illinois at a quarter of an inch of ice accretion or more. The same goes for northwest Indiana, and then it goes back into Iowa, south and west into parts of Kansas. And they've got, there's a stretch of winter weather advisories are up for northeastern Pennsylvania. They're up for the Catskills. They're up for southern New York. They're also up for pretty much the northern half of Pennsylvania into the western part where it extends a little further south, almost all of Ohio, two-thirds of Indiana, two-thirds of Illinois, southern half of Michigan, southern Wisconsin. Again, all of this is about ice accretion. And by the way, the darker green that you see in southwest Kansas, that's freezing fog, a freezing fog advisory that they have up in effect there.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, this again, you're right. It's not a, it's not a major system by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, when you look at it from the standpoint of the meteorology that's going on, it's a weak system, but sometimes the weak ones are the ones that give you the bigger problems because you just don't think it's going to be a big deal and it winds up being a bigger deal.
Right. I would say again for the lower Hudson Valley, through the day tomorrow, up until 7 o'clock tomorrow evening, the total amount of precipitation that is expected to fall is probably less than 1/10 of an inch. In some places, maybe the amount measured in hundredths of an inch, 6, 7, 8 hundredths of an inch. But again, that could be that you add on temperatures that are hovering close to the freezing mark or on cold surfaces at or below freezing, and that's enough to do it. That's enough to cause very slippery conditions. So people will have to keep that in their back of their mind tomorrow, especially places as you mentioned north of 84, because I think we're going to be in for some real and people tomorrow in the afternoon eating. I'm sure there'll going to be not a few people who are saying, "What's going on here? Nobody told us this was going to happen. Nobody warned us of this. There was no warnings. There was no advisories. What's going on?" Well, we're warning you. We here on Joe and Joe, we're telling you right now that there could be some problems tomorrow. The further north you drive or the further north you go from the New York area on points north, and especially again along and north of the 84 corridor, because we're looking at again the prospect or potential for some slippery conditions.
And some light snow is going to be part of this equation as well. Mostly a coating to an inch is the general forecast for much of the Northeast. Now, there are a few pockets in upstate New York and into Vermont and New Hampshire and Western Massachusetts where some twos are being thrown out, but that would be pretty much the upside to the top to it. Snowmount's a little bit more in southern Michigan, north of Grand Rapids, an inch in Detroit, but just northeast of Detroit in the 3 to 4 inch range, and 1 inch snows or less, a coating to an inch on the northern fringe of the precip in Iowa and into southern Wisconsin. And you look at the satellite loop, Joe. It's hard to find anywhere that doesn't have cloud cover. And we're getting into a run here. It looks like that we're going to be dealing with four distinct waves of moisture and low pressure that's going to be coming up the eastern seaboard, and a lot of Gulf moisture is building now and feeding into East Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and into Arkansas. These areas here that I just mentioned, I was checking the drought monitor earlier today, still showing areas of excessive to exceptional drought. So uh, they're the rains that they've seen during the last couple of months have put a bit of a dent, but not a lot of a dent, not a large dent in this drought. But this system is they're going to probably wind up with 5 to 10 inches of rain in total, and some of it that's fallen today across much of the South. And this is going to at least go a ways to start to alleviate the excessive drought conditions that they have there. And you can also see the trail of moisture. I mean, from the Pacific down to off the coast of Baja California, these disturbances are coming across Mexico and into the Gulf of Mexico. And as I said, there's four of them. The last one will probably come Sunday night and Monday, which we'll also talk about when we get to it. But this is a gloom and doom week that's setting up here.
Right. You may not see much of the sun until maybe Saturday. And even Saturday, Joe, I said more clouds than sun, but at least you have some mention of sun on Saturday as opposed to tomorrow and for Wednesday and for Thursday and for Friday, where it may be just complete a complete shutout in terms of sunshine. It's yeah, I agree to it, with you that it is gloomy out there. Will be gloomy for much of the next several days coming up.
Yeah, no doubt. And let's check out the radar as we take a look. What is all this stuff over on the radar? I'm just looking at the radar this afternoon. There's all this stuff that's on the radar in the Northeast. Is any of this reaching the ground anywhere? Because I couldn't find anything.
It wasn't raining or precipitating where I am. It obviously it's virga. It's coming down and evaporating before reaching the ground, but there was no precipitation whatsoever out there today. So I don't know what that is, but
I mean, no, clearly there are radar echoes that are showing up. But I was checking earlier this mid afternoon. I saw all these echoes across Pennsylvania, and I'm checking observations, and everybody goes partly sunny, mostly cloudy, but none of this must be reaching the ground. I mean, that's another reason why with the Arctic air it was just these get bone dry dew points, and meanwhile you could see the disturbance that's come out of the Gulf and is moving into southern Oklahoma. The radar has that hook signature to it. Heavy rains today in southeast Texas, including Houston and Galveston. They've kind of come out of that at the moment at 7:50 Eastern time. There's some showers out to the west that are probably going to move through now. There's some heavy rain in right near the Louisiana state line on either side. We've got some moderate to heavy rain in southwestern Arkansas and northeastern Arkansas as well. And then it goes back into Oklahoma. And just want to also point out, just going back to the watches and warnings map, we have flood watches up for parts of East Texas and western Louisiana. The lighter green areas that you're seeing, those are flood warnings um, for for river flooding. And I'm just kind of want to see they've got them up here in Georgia, so I just want to make sure I'm pointing. Yeah, flood warning for pretty much all of the state. And I'm trying to see what this is in real. Oh, the rivers apparently a flood warning continues for the Altamaha River and a whole bunch of other rivers. I'm just trying to see what they're putting up these flooding. Minor flooding is forecast. Bankful conditions occur upstream from the gauges. Okay, so there's already stuff going on with respect to the rivers in parts of the South, and as a result, with this upcoming rain, it's going to be a problem. Should point out too that we had some winter storm warnings up for the Sierra Nevadas. I think those are now. Nope, they're still up. That small area. The new computer I've got, uh, Joe, it's like the colors are. I'm trying to readjust my eyes to the colors here because I thought maybe that would look like more like a red flag warning than anything else. Rainfall forecast from WPC. You can see the big amounts there. There's a hatched area of 7 to 10 inches. If I got my math right, let me just make sure. 4 to 5, 5 to 7. Yeah, there's a hatched area there that covers much of central Louisiana of 7 to 10 inches over the next 7 days, and the 4 inch line is pretty extensive to southern Arkansas through East Texas into southeast Louisiana, then running northeast from there, in cutting on a diagonal from Mississippi to Alabama to northeast northern Georgia. In fact, they've got me in a 5 inch plus zone on this map. Inch and a half amounts going all the way to southern Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. We also have inch and a half plus amounts for eastern Pennsylvania, much of New Jersey except the north part and the south part, and also Long Island, and kind of just nudging there along parts of southern Connecticut. The half-inch line goes up almost into central New Hampshire and up into north central New York. The thing is with this rainfall, Joe, is that it's not one system. This is four of them that are going to. So the rain is not going to be particularly heavy. It's just going to be, you know, it's just going to be long durations, short breaks in between. weather systems, kind of a train of these just coming up. And that's going to probably not cause it. I don't think it. I don't believe it. There should be any flooding issues, even with melting snow cover in a lot of these places. I don't think there's going to be flood issues. An inch and a half spread over 4 days probably won't produce that.
Well, it's quite a comeback. I'm sure that many folks down in the Southland were praying, oh, we need rain. Oh, we're desperate for rain because it was not just a drought, but a severe drought. And I always say, be careful what you wish for. Mother Nature always has this tendency of balancing the checkbook in her own weird way. And apparently she's trying to do that right now, balancing the checkbook, balancing the lack or paucity of any kind of uh, rainfall from the summertime now with all of this that's hitting the folks down south.
SPC for this is for Tuesday into Wednesday has a marginal risk of severe weather in South Texas along the coastal bend, as well as in Southeast Texas, moving into the western half of Louisiana. That area also has a 2% tornado risk. And then we'll go to day three, and this is for Wednesday into Thursday. We have a marginal risk along the Texas coastal bend, the southern half of Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and into a small portion of southern Alabama, right about to the Florida state line. So this doesn't really look like a big severe weather type, severe thunderstorm producer. But again, going just back to the satellite real quick, you got all this Gulf moisture just coming right up, and there's more to it as all this energy that is over the Baja Peninsula continues to feed moisture into the Gulf. So as one system goes, the next one follows. And as far as snow probability is concerned, not a whole lot. WPC has, you have to go up into Vermont and in upstate New York, north of I-90 to see a 50% or higher probability for at least two. Also, a small portion of Western New York around Buffalo. The southern edge of the 2 inch line really doesn't extend very far south. I mean, they got a 5% chance, 0 to 5% chance. In that brown area, 1 to 5%, I should say. I mean, you really have to go up into the like right near the Massachusetts Connecticut border, at least according to WPC. And then when we just go take a look out in the west, it's not particularly busy out in the west. The mountains are, yeah, in the mountains you're seeing areas where you're going to see the probability of 2 inches or more uh, up there, but no big deal. So let's roll to the upper air. Very interesting runs today, particularly the 18Z run, which I just looked at. Um, by the way, I'm just kind of curious, Joe, because I don't have the control my control room board up. So we didn't get to 100 likes yet.
According to my count here, it's 77 likes. And by the way, we also have our first super chat hit of the night from Donald Colgan. Thank you very much, Donald.
Thank you, Donald. Yes, and if you could keep an eye on that, because I can see the chat, but I can't really see much else. So anyhow, uh, let's look at this upper air. So this goes back to Friday, and you can see the system for Friday night into Saturday that moved out and on its way. And of course, now we're in this sort of ridge position here in the east. The whole flavor of uh, what's across North America has changed. You had higher than normal pressures all across the Arctic, which displaced all that Arctic air southward. That has now quickly been replaced by lower than normal pressures. And that, of course, brings a ridge up into the eastern part of the United States. You've got troughing coming into the west, and just basically sending shortwave after shortwave after shortwave during this week and going into this weekend. There you go.
There you go.
Uh, so here's an upper low that's forecast. Some of this Pacific energy, I'll just run it back. Starts out way in the Pacific, and I'll just let me just mark it here for you. It's right there. Okay. So this is going to take a trip down into take the southern route, and we'll march it along, and you can see that upper low drops down, cuts off in New Mexico and in Oklahoma, and then starts to turn to the northeast and remains fairly vigorous as it does so. And that might be important in the longer term. Also, what's kind of interesting on this run, and we're only talking about 5 days from now, we're not really talking about a long time into the future here, is a change in the, and I want to see what the models do. This is the 18Z run. I want to see what the models do on the next two cycles because all of a sudden, Joe, the trough at the west pulls westward, and you start to get ridging next Sunday in the northwest, which is an interesting development. And you've got this trough in the east now that's going to be moving through. Uh, the the system does look like it wants to hold together as it goes out, and then this run like really kind of startled me because uh, I think we're going to see the pattern flip back, but this 18Z run was one where the pattern flip looks like it wants to occur earlier. So I want to be a little careful here. I'm not 100% sold yet that this is because this was such a radical departure to from the prior run, but it suddenly started to show this. I was like, whoa. And it actually gets us into a cold pattern a whole lot faster than the longer range models, which are all eventually getting us to a colder pattern. They're just taking longer for it to get there. But again, interesting development here from today's runs. But focusing short range, I just want, as we look at this next train of systems, sort of like a choo-choo train, I guess. But here's tonight and tomorrow. I'll have the full U.S. map up here, so everybody can see the whole U.S. view. Moisture in the Gulf. You see the high. There's a high there's one high that's in North Carolina. There's another high, and we've been talking about the fact that these highs are coming down in Canada into southeastern Canada, and that's going to impact the weather. And I think to some degree that is the case tomorrow, Joe, particularly north of the coast. There's some colder air with that high, probably at low levels. Just enough of it might bleed down to keep temperatures at that critical juncture. And in fact, the GFS wants to have light snow more than anything else Tuesday night into Wednesday, which is kind of interesting in New England. Eventually, the high goes out because there's no block. So there's more rain that comes in later Wednesday night into early Thursday. Then there's another little break, and then here comes another wave for Friday with a surge of rain, and then that goes out. Now, before I go to the next one, I want to ask you a question. As I'm looking at this, it looks like there's a lot of the guidance earlier, they were going for upper 50s and low 60s, which I sort of thought, okay. But then I'm looking at this, Joe, and I'm wondering because of how this low is tracking and that there's some sort of frontal boundary right near the coast, might it turn out to be a little bit more of a struggle to get that high on Friday, especially if it's raining?
Well, you know something, I noticed that some of the models were talking more in terms of temperatures on Friday in the 40s, and yet there are forecasts out there that are still calling for temperatures in the mid 50s. So I'm not sure. Maybe the expectation is that as the front from the west approaches, we'll get into a gustier southerly airflow, which will push that milder air in and bring the temperatures up. But
This
even
kind of
more
imply
interesting,
this kind of implies that there's a warm front that just never gets through. There's a high up in eastern Quebec. There's actually from Long Island northward, you can see there's a turn of the easterly isobar there. So I'm wondering whether I saw in the digital forecast that they had low 60s all the way up to you for Friday, and I'm looking at
I think
this and I'm like,
60s are a little bit beyond
yeah, I don't
hope
think
for
that's
me.
going to happen.
Not to say that I wouldn't like to see temperatures in the 60s so that we could get rid of all this snow that still is on my property, but and I know that's not going to make a lot of the snow lovers on the chat board happy, but that's the way I feel. But I think that's kind of pushing it for the end of the week. Also, what is interesting, Joe, is that the Climate Prediction Center continues to show above normal temperatures. I mean, they don't even show any kind of a drop back to near or even below normal temperatures.
Right.
There's no reflection of that. They just continue to say above normal, above normal, above normal for
Right.
not only
And
6 to
and
10, but
and
8 to 14 days.
yeah, and those were done off the 0Z run last night. So, the day side, or particularly the 18Z run, was a little eye opening. I mean, I just to see it there in the after day 5 or day 6 to start to see that change. Now again, it might be you know, it, oftentimes if you see something in terms of the general pattern at day 5, it's not going to change a whole lot. But this was pretty radical, so I'm going to be guarded in my view of this until I get a couple of runs to see if this just was a blip or something more important. Regardless, though, I know a lot of people are starting to, been looking at maps, and the European for 2 runs was bringing snow for later Sunday night for I think it was more for Monday, and the GFS was doing it, then it wasn't doing it, and now it's doing it again. So here's what it boils down to as far as Sunday is concerned. And it's very simple. If you look up on the upper right, you're going to see a cold front that's coming through eastern Canada and swings across across Atlantic Canada. There's another one of these big highs coming down. At the same time, you've got this low getting kicked out from Texas northeastward as the high is building southward. So in situations like this, it has to time perfectly. There is no block. Okay. There is no block to hold that high. So if the low is slower, the high is going to come in and then go out. All right. If the low is faster, okay, then you have to look and see where the position of the high is. And then you also have to look, is it as strong as it's being modeled? Is it not strong enough? But so to kind of for snow lovers to get excited about this, I'm just going to warn you, just be very, very cautious here because it's a very, it's a, we're always looking, you kind of look at these situations and you try to find one where it's not going to be a struggle to get a snowfall. Well, it almost always is a struggle one way or another. And in this particular instance, is a really great example of how perfect I think it needs to be in order to pull this off. Can it happen? Sure, it is possible, but you better have that high coming down and timed in the right spot, and you better have the storm system moving to our south and also being timed, with perfect timing. So I wouldn't get too excited until maybe another 3 or 4 days with regards to this. And then
Always wait.
look how cold it gets by day 7. Day 7, day 8, Joe, a 510 thickness I'm sorry, that's a five. Let me see, 516, no, 510 thickness here by next Wednesday with a northerly flow, and a cold high in Illinois. That's cold air that's in the eastern part of the United States. I mean, that's surprising to me. And then that goes out, and guess what? There's another front and another low that's off the East Coast, but slight colder air comes in behind that, then another high with colder air in behind that. So I think the models are just kind of telling us a change is coming. I just don't know whether it's the way the operational run is showing it, or if it's going to be more like the ensemble runs, which get you to a colder pattern. They just take you on a different path and take a little longer to get there.
Well, what we're talking about in terms of a potential winter storm still is about a week away.
Right.
And as I've often said, as I've said more often than not, actually, I often wish that we had models that only went out like the NAM to 84 hours because you don't start speculating beyond 84. By the time you get to 72 and 84 hours, a lot of the data set has all of the information that it needs to give you a viable forecast. It's already onshore across southwestern North America, western North America. Right now, the models for a week in advance are just trying to guess where everything is going to be, and sometimes You hit it on the mark, and that's also why you get these fluctuations. Like one run says, "Hey, big storm," and then 12 hours later says, "No, maybe not quite. Nothing's going to phase or teleconnect." It's silly to try to rack your brains out over something that's going to be happening maybe a week from now because you really won't get a good, sure idea as to what may or will happen
I
until about
agree.
3 days before. So,
I agree. But at least I wanted to lay out what we're dealing with here,
right,
which is,
right.
a big high coming down. Does it and the timing and everything else? It's got to be perfect for it to happen. So I wouldn't get. I'm not going to get. I also am not going to get worked up over this until we get uh, at least until Wednesday or Thursday. And then we can go. Then we can figure it out from there. Doing a little camera adjustment, are we?
Yeah, just trying to adjust it a little bit, but
By
it
the way,
doesn't.
did the Detroit Lions win their game?
Yes, they did.
They did. Okay, that's right. I suddenly remembered now because I was watching. I just had a blank moment in my mind, and I now, as I asked the question, I remember now seeing you know, the end of the game. Don't mind me. I'm
Well,
too worked up and excited over my new computer.
I'm still shaking my head over what happened to Buffalo, though.
Oh well, they have the right wide curse goes back to when they played the Super Bowl with the Giants back in '91, I think it was.
It was almost the exact same situation, the exact
Yeah,
same type of kick, wide right, and
yeah,
I'm sitting there watching, and I'm saying, "You gotta be kidding me!" and and the faces on some of those Buffalo fans, just like, "No."
I know it really is. It's the wide for them. It's the wide right curse. That's been something that they've had to deal with for the forever. The Bills. They always seem to manage to put good teams out there, but they never can take it all the way.
Well, I believe I have Briller Jeopardy tonight.
You do, yes, you do.
Yes, just looking for it here, as Mr. Briller has sent along that batch of questions, and I'm going to find it. And here it is. I've got it in front of me now. On this Briller Jeopardy, average, and this continues from last night, average January snowfall for the following 5 cities, plus a bonus city. We'll get to that after we do the five. How about January snowfall, average January snowfall, Joe, for the Motor City, Detroit? Speaking of the Lions,
Uh, I'm going to say I'm going to say 41.
average January snowfall?
Oh, January. I'm sorry. I thought you meant seasonal.
No,
I'm going to say 14.
where's the bell?
On the nose?
Get it on the nose, Joe.
Well, 41 is 14 backwards.
Yeah.
Uh, Just just so we're clear.
So, how about Indianapolis?
Indianapolis. I will say, are these round numbers, by the way?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
none of these are like a 7.3 or 10.7 or whatever.
I'm gonna say for Indianapolis, I'm gonna say 8.
Oh my goodness.
Really?
Oh, Joe. Two in a row. Can he
Wow.
can he possibly make it three in a row now?
I swear I don't have the answers. And he has. I don't see when he gets it. I don't see the questions. When I
The
get it,
only
he doesn't see the questions
the
or
only
the
thing that
answers.
the only thing that Joe has in front of him are the very thick technical the thick manual that came with his computer
Yeah.
to tell him everything
Oh
about.
yeah. Hold on. You're talking about. Hold on. Let me just so I can. So you're talking about this, okay? It opens up to this. An eagle. You need eagle's eyes to see the print on this in whatever language it's in.
Isn't that amazing?
And and then you got this. I got this book, okay? This book. Also, you need eagle's eyes And you wonder why it took me 10 minutes to find the power switch with the on off button. Okay, what's next?
Number 3 on the list is Mary Richards' favorite city, Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. Minneapolis. I'm going, it's a little tricky up there too, because like it's like one of those months that might go down. I'll say 14 again.
Well, the string is broken. Owen
What?
Daniel, by the way, said 14. And Jason Fox says 16. John Melander, 18. Maggie P. If it was a snake, it would have bit you. 12. Adam Lowe also at 12. But Keith James II, Joe, it's at
11.
11. 11. And William Huber also with 11. David Fuller with 11. So that was the magic number for Minneapolis. 11 inches on average snowfall in January.
Okay.
So how about New York City Central Park or Le Parc Central?
Right. Well, that number's gone up, so I'm going to say 10.
Again, if it was a snake, it would have bit you, Joe.
Okay, so it's either 9 or 11. Michael McGuire says 9.
And Michael McGuire would be right.
Christinapedia. I'm going to challenge that one though. I'm curious if it was 9.9 or something like that, but I'll accept it. I guess I'll accept it. 9, 10. It's close enough.
Okay. Number 5 is Oklahoma City. Oklahoma with it. Well, anyway.
4.
4. A little too high, but pretty close.
Okay.
David Fuller says 7. That's much too high. Northern Grace, very close. You're in the snake section with 3.
So Fled and Frank Scalera and Rich Rothmansky and Helen Bertona all say, and Christinapedia and Maggie P and Owen Daniel all say 2.
And that's it. 2.
And Frank R says 2 also.
And here's the bonus.
Okay.
Caribou.
Caribou?
Caribou. Average January snowfall.
26?
Ah, Joe. So close. Snake sector again.
Snake sector. So that means it's either 27 or 25.
Right.
So Maggie P said 25 and Mike McGuire says 27.
Well, Maggie P, you got it. 25.
25. All right. Very
There you
good.
go.
All right. I don't have any much else to add. Do you?
No, I don't. I'm just going to
Other
say
than I do want to say, James Davidson, if you're still on the board, I saw your comment on one of the videos about the last system changing to rain in coastal New Jersey. I'm guessing that didn't happen where you were. Okay, so just to be clear, because except for Wildwood, that I saw it was mixing there for 1 hour. No one on the Jersey Shore changed to rain in this last event. So anyhow, that does happen from time to time. So I wanted to just put that out there.
okay, well, we'll be back tomorrow night at our normal time, 7:35, and we are all hoping that everybody has a safe trip to and from school or from work tomorrow, especially if you're in a zone that we were talking about that might have ice or sleet or wet snow tomorrow night. Be careful if you're out and about. And again, we'll be back and we'll go through it all tomorrow evening at 7:35. And good night to all and be safe tomorrow.
And yes, same here. Same goes for me. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Nighty night.
Good night.